Uh-oh. I did something wrong. Gee whiz. Okay, we on.
Good afternoon. So good to see everyone here on today. We are so excited. We are so excited. We are so excited um, as we gear up for another awesome, amazing, wonderful Bible study. We are in an amazing text. Now, I know you're going to say, uh, I say this every Tuesday, but today, for real, really mean it. As we just celebrated the first Sunday of Advent, we have something special. We have something special. We have something special happening. We are going to look at Psalm 122. I'm going to share my screen so that you can see this particular scripture passage. We're in Psalm 122. And this is a psalm that we highlight around our Advent season. This is a psalm that we highlighted particularly for the first Sunday in Advent, which is centered around the theme or topic of hope. And so we're going to delve into this psalm for today. Psalm 122 from the New Revised Standard Version. I was glad when they said to me, "Let us go to the house of the Lord. Our feet are standing within your gates, O Jerusalem." Jerusalem, built as a city that is bound firmly together. To it, the tribes go up, the tribes of the Lord, as was decreed for Israel, to give thanks to the name of the Lord. For there the thrones for judgment were set up, the thrones of the house of David. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May they prosper who love you. Peace be within your walls and security within your towers. For the sake of my relatives and friends, I will say, peace be within you. For the sake of the house of the Lord, our God, I will seek your good. This is an interesting psalm, is it not, family? It is this particular psalm that is of particular interest to us, because this psalm speaks to us and explains to us what Advent is all about. We're going to be talking about 4 themes over the next 4 Tuesdays: hope, peace, joy, and love. Because our Advent season speaks to these 4 particular themes, leading up to an important time in our Christian calendar. Advent. What does Advent mean? And what does specifically Psalm 22 and the hope of Advent mean for us as a Christian community? You might have heard of the word Advent before. If you especially grew up a part of a Christian church, maybe you heard this term spoken towards the end of November into the beginning of January. Advent is an interesting word. It is one laced in amazing, wonderful meanings. Let's first talk about themes of Advent and what exactly Advent means. When we talk about Advent, we're specifically referencing the definition of arrival. Advent means arrival, where you are not just expecting something to show up, but in particular, something that's notable. What makes Advent an interesting term or word is that Advent represents there's something notable that is showing up, something of importance, not just something that's a regular thing, but something of importance of some sort. And so when we think about Advent, The first dynamic that we think of is the showing up of Jesus, the birth of Jesus, or what some say is the second coming of Jesus. Isn't it good to know that no matter what we are experiencing in life, Jesus always shows up for us? And in some sense, we recognize this time as the second coming of Jesus. That's right. We looked at or thought about the first coming of Jesus, some say, during the Old Testament, when the Holy Spirit comes alongside Moses in Exodus chapter 3 and declares to Pharaoh, "Let my enslaved people in Egypt go." But ironically, we're also wrestling with or come to Jesus, no pun intended, moment that sometimes Advent has two opposing meanings. And this is where we're going to spend a lot of time landing on this particular theme for today. What we often have to wrestle with, and Psalm 122 speaks to this, is this understanding in some sense that when we think about the coming of Jesus, it is not during a time where everything is peaceful, where everything is wonderful, where everything is just happy-go-lucky. No, the time of Advent always occurs at a moment of crisis. The time of Advent always occurs at a moment of crisis. In this Psalm 122 text, the psalmist David has penned this psalm as it relates to, unfortunately, the destruction of Jerusalem. You see, unfortunately, Jerusalem has recently found itself under attack, and the whole land is taken captive by particular enemies from neighboring lands. And so David pens this psalm as a reminder to stay encouraged in some sense. The people of Jerusalem who find themselves bewildered, conflicted, and in some sense hopeless, now hear the psalmist David stepping by with a word of encouragement. Let's pause there for a second. So in some sense, talking about Advent, and in particular talking about hope, is a radical act, because in the midst of the sadness, the controversy, the crisis, the frustration that we feel, the bigger, larger, deeper question for us all is, how do we still maintain hope? It's easy to maintain hope when everything is going well. But how do we maintain hope when various crises arrive in our lives? What is it, in some sense, that keeps us above sadness, depression? What is it that keeps us away from the marginalized edge? What particular thing can we hold on to in the midst of crisis? So the first reflective question for us today, as we enter into the season of Advent and we land on hope, we have to begin to first wrestle with reflecting on the particular crisis in our life. What is bugging you? What is burdening you? What is weighing you down? How do you stop for a moment and reflect on that? How do you pause for a moment and say to yourself, wow, I need to first and foremost just give space to that. I need to, in some sense, really feel all the feelings of that. This, in some sense, is what Advent first and foremost is about. First and foremost, Advent is about, how do I really feel all the pain and crisis I'm currently going through? And then number two, how do I maintain hope? A famous biblical theologian by the name of Dr. Raquel Letzum, says that Advent teaches us how do we hold two opposing feelings together at the same time. Advent, in some sense, is teaching us how do we feel the crisis and feel sad and down and out about the crisis, and at the same time, how do we experience joy? How do we hold two opposing feelings together? This becomes the ultimate question for us. Let me give you an example as I share my screen and show you an interesting image. It is possible, as you look at this image, to wrestle with two opposing feelings can be true together at the same time. It is possible to feel capable and lost. It is possible to feel smiling and struggling. It is possible to feel kind and at the same time set boundaries. It is possible to feel vulnerable and powerful. It is possible to feel successful and traumatized. It is possible to experience being extroverted and at the same time alone. It is possible to feel valuable and flawed. It is possible to be an introvert and also reach out for human connection. It is possible to feel loving and at the same time questioning. Two opposing feelings can in fact rest together at the same time in some sense. This season of Advent teaches us not to sweep our sadness, our scare, our madness under a rug, not to ignore those feelings and simply jump to joy, but how do we hold those feelings together with our hope? How do we experience joy in some sense with, in some sense, our hope? I'm going to pause there for a second because this is a point that goes against what we're taught in some sense in Western civilization or our American culture. You see, Dr. Raquel Letzum explains to us that we are used to engaging in either or language. We're used to picking a side, engaging in picking a side that's between two options that are polar opposite. But true acts of faith is, can we experience both of these feelings in some sense without any sense of siding far to the left or siding far to the right? When is a time in your life when you felt two types of feelings? What did that feel like to acknowledge, I feel scared and powerful, or I feel sad and joyful? What did that feel like? Any comments or questions or thoughts from our pastor on that?
We there nothing in the comment, but what you're raising is, I have found more the norm than the exception, except that what you point out is so true, that we are taught, we are cultured in this society to see black, white. It is or it ain't. It either is this or either is that. When in reality, most folk, I can't speak for most folk, but I think that for me, this has been the norm, that they're always sometimes competing and sometimes walking together, expressions of emotions, that I'm always a part of me. There are times that I'm excited and horrified at the same time. There are times that I am feeling dejected, yet some joy in the dejection. There are times that I am feeling introvert. In fact, you did some few years ago before the pandemic, you were doing some personality test stuff. And I don't know if I shared it then, but I took the Myers-Briggs years ago. I took it twice years ago. One was when I was on the police department, and I forget another time. And both times is where I discovered that I came out introvert and extrovert. Mine came out introvert and extrovert.
Oh,
You know,
oh, oh,
that's why I say this has been the norm. So yeah, good stuff.
yes, yes, yes. Dr. Raquel Letzum says that we have to be, in some sense, reminded to, in this season of Advent, honor all of our feelings, whatever those feelings are, even if it feels like those feelings are two different polar opposites. How do we honor all of those feelings? Even if we were to again turn to our particular Bible study text, Psalm 122. In some sense, Psalm 122 is in fact about the psalmist feeling two types of feelings. I'm going to share my screen again and show you some particular examples from our Psalms 22 text. Watch this. It's very interesting. Many of us have never read this scripture from this perspective. We're used to reading this scripture because it is a call to worship for Sunday morning during worship, right? That first and second verse in particular, I was glad when they said to me, "Let us go to the house of the Lord. Our feet are standing within your gates, O Jerusalem." But watch this now. While the psalm starts off in a joyous, celebratory, somewhat call to worship type of style, the psalmist is also not afraid to name their sadness in these moments. Watch. In verse 3, the psalmist highlights Jerusalem, built as a city that is bound firmly together. To it, the tribes go up, the tribes of the Lord, as was decreed for Israel, to give thanks to the name of the Lord. For there the thrones for judgment were set up, the thrones of the house of David. Now, verse 6 is where we begin to see a shift. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May they prosper who love you. Peace be within your walls and security within your towers. For the sake of my relatives and friends, I will say peace be with you. For the sake of the house of the Lord our God, I will seek your good. Many biblical scholars say, in some sense, this is where verses 6 through 9, the Psalms takes a drastic turn. No longer is the psalmist highlighting this wonderful call to worship of praise and joy and hope, but the psalmist is not afraid to now turn to naming, acknowledging, highlighting their sadness around the destruction of Jerusalem. Did you see how the passage flips in some sense? But ironically, also Dr. Letzum teaches us in some sense, the irony is the psalm starts off well, good, wonderful, but then ends on sadness and pain. And that itself is an interesting point, because we're used to maybe starting on sadness and thinking about the ways in which we need to shift our sadness to joy. But this psalm is reminding us, the second point, what are times when we need to end on the sadness? We can start at joy, but also name and claim our sadness and end on it. No need to end on happy-go-lucky. Everything is well. Everything is going to be fine. All is well. In some sense, Dr. Raquel Letzum says the irony about our Advent season, and in particular the first Sunday of Advent, is we are told that we should have hope, but the the irony is many of us still find ourselves needing to sit in the sadness and not necessarily immediately jump to the hope, even if it means sitting in the sadness over the course of a month. So now, the next reflective question for us to grapple with is, how often do we sit in the sadness of our pain? Or do we immediately want to jump to the hope? When was the last time you gave yourself permission to sit in the sadness or the pain of your story? When was the last time you gave yourself permission to sit in the sadness or grief of the crisis, and not simply just in superficial ways or in superficial terms, jump to, oh, everything is wonderful, everything's good, everything's going to be all right. Another biblical scholar by the name of Valerie Bridgman and Emily Towns highlight sometimes reading of the Bible forces us to grapple with some difficult feelings that we can't just praise, pray, or sing away. But what do we do with the fact that sometimes not every message may end on hope? Sometimes we do have to sit in the pains of life, and we can't find a positive meaning or a positive spin to put to these pains. In some sense, Dr. Raquel Letzum says, that's what Advent is all about. These people who are gathering with a sense of expectation about what an impending birth of a Savior will do for them must sit and wait. Their story doesn't have a happy ending just yet. That becomes the third lesson for us. Advent, and this Psalm 122, is ending on sadness because in some sense, it is forcing us to sit in the wait. Meaning we know hope is coming, but what does it mean when you have to wait on the hope? The hope is not showing up today. It's not showing up tomorrow. It's not even showing up next week. It may not even be showing up next month. It may not even be showing up next year. We have to sit and wait for the hope. Let's pause there for a second if anybody had anything they wanted to add in those moments. When was the last time, as you thought about or reflected on your life, when you had to sit and wait for the solution? And you didn't even know the timeline for when the solution was going to be given to you, because you just had to sit and wait on it.
Yep.
I have tons of stories about the ways in which delay does not mean denial.
Kathleen says this morning.
Oh,
she said that was prayer this morning, and that's why it saddens me that the music genre called the blues is not as popular with our people as it used to be, because the blues came at a time where not long after emancipation and all that, and then the reality sets in after Reconstruction is dismantled. The blues come in because then Black folk across the nation had to face, we're free, but free to do what? And free to do it where? And it was an incredibly frustrating and overwhelming time for our people, because the promise of freedom meant now nothing really. It meant that the attack in some ways was even worse. And so blues music is born in that, where the expression of the frustration, the expression of the depression, the expression of it was commingled with another feeling that, well, I'm gonna find a way to laugh at it. So you'll find in blues lines, it'll be some sadness, and then they'll say something crazy funny in there, you know, as Richard Pryor used to say, to laugh to keep from crying and things like that. So there were, you know, the blues music had a very powerful meat. Well, it was the expression of what our people had to deal with and were overwhelmed by. Jeanette says she found she had to just trust in God to get through it. You talked about that waiting time, you know. So yeah, good.
Yes, yes, yes. So there's another image I want to invite us to reflect on in substance. There's another image that we have to grapple with in these moments in some sense. Now, when you see this image, I hope you have pen and paper handy. I hope you have pen and paper handy when you check out this image, because we're gonna spend some time. Looking at this particular image, and it has a lot.
Uh-oh. I don't know if you can hear us, Dr. Buhuro. You froze up there. Right now, I don't know if you all in the YouTube space, if you all are able. Okay, I see Kathleen. You just posted. Dr. Buhuro, I believe, is her. She's froze up for a minute. Let's see if it'll unstick itself. So for right now, I want to acknowledge, and we'll see if Dr. Buhuro was able to get back. And so I'm texting her now. But Jeanette, that is a powerful statement. That when you said it seemed as though I'm in a whirlwind twist. That's a powerful statement, between the struggle and power. I mean, you really put it into words, what is extremely challenging. That dual thing that Dr. Buhuro was talking about, being, having two feelings at the same time. And so I just want to thank you for sharing that, because it is real. And that, it comes out, I think, a lot during what we call these holidays, and with all of the commercialization, that's going on, and then dealing with grief at the same time, the thinking of, growing up in Christmas time when family was together, and then realizing now that everybody's not together. Some people are dealing with the grief of recent, and others are dealing with the long-term grief, knowing that you never get over the passing of someone, and there are moments, where it just rises up again, but, it is a reality. Hey, there we go. Looky.
I'm sorry, my computer shut down.
It's all right. It's all right. I was just doing my Sammy Davis Jr. dancing while waiting on you to get back. You get ready to start. Jeanette put something in the chat that was powerful.
Okay.
She said it seems as though I'm in a whirlwind twist between the struggle and power. I said, my God, that's it.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
That is awesome.
Uh-huh.
Because yes, that symbolizes exactly what we're talking about this morning. And it symbolizes what Advent is all about. We're finding ourselves in the middle of this wrestle, in the middle of this struggle. Thank you so much for highlighting that. I'm going to share my screen again. Uh, and I'm going to ask that you please make sure to have a pen and paper handy so that you can copy copy this uh, copy this image in some sense. And I've also sent this to our pastor. There is something called spiritual bypassing or fragmentation. Spiritual bypassing is this notion or idea that our feelings sit separate. And so Advent is about avoiding or not engaging in and resisting spiritual bypassing. What do I mean by that? I'll make this larger so you can see it more. Spiritual bypassing is this notion that you engage in either or high vibrations or low vibrations, never together, always separate. So, high vibrations are where you're constantly thinking about ascension, meaning going to heaven, love, peace, joy, flow. Low vibrations are where you're constantly thinking about what's often termed in our culture as negative feelings, resistance, sadness, rage, grief, hurt. That's called engaging in low vibrations. But it's not healthy for us to become fragmented, where we're cutting off parts of ourselves and separating ourselves. It's not good to engage in separating our high vibration from our low vibration. Well, Advent reminds us of, while we're waiting for hope to show up in the physical form, how do we embrace authentic healing of operating instead in a circular motion where we embrace the sadness, the joy, the grief, and the love, the peace, the joy, in some sense, where all of these reside together. Hence why we use the image of the circle. Because in some sense, Advent season is about how do you remain joyful while you are sad or scared or waiting and wondering what the future holds in some sense. And so this is our call to action during this Advent. How do we sit in the wholeness of our entire beings by embracing all of our parts in some sense? We are called to resist white supremacy. White supremacy tells us to engage in a hierarchical structure around our feelings, whereas Eastern civilization says, nope, all of our emotions can sit together in this sacred circular motion. All of our emotions can, in some sense, reside together with no problems. This is what hope is actually about. If you don't get anything else from our time together this morning or this afternoon, please get this. Hope is all about not just doing away with your sadness, but the true definition of hope is, how do we carry our sadness and our joy together? Hope is not about just doing away with our feelings of anger, frustration, and scare. but letting them sit right next to our peace or our feeling powerful. And in some sense, that is an act of resisting white supremacy culture, because white supremacy culture wants us to choose. And frankly, we don't have to choose. The goodness and the graciousness of the God we serve is that God created us to be complex human beings that can sit and experience all the feelings that we feel in our lives. And we, honestly, family, do not have to choose. It is okay. An example of that is this image. Oftentimes, we believe that we move through stages of grief from level to level, step by step. But what you see on the left-hand side of your screen is not actually accurate. What is accurate is what's been my experience. And I know what's been each of your experiences, where all of these feelings are jumbled together. All of these feelings are together. And so in some sense, this is what we have to grapple with. Get it? Right? How do we embrace the messiness? How do we embrace the all of the messiness of life? I'll pause there. I'll pause there for a moment. What ideas come up for you when you see this image?
Jeanette asked for the other chart. I told her I have it, and I'll make copies of it. And also, Mama Inez says, hope is all I have. And so, yeah, the one, I'm so glad you put this image up. I need this one too.
Okay. You want me to put the other one up? You want me to put the other one up?
Well, it doesn't matter because I'm gonna get it to her because you sent that.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Because I've listened to folk talk about stages of grief for years, and every time I would hear it, I would say, well, it'd be nice to be able to walk through stages like that, but I have never, ever walked through the stages like that. It was always like the other one. Real quick, I wanna read something. A beautiful sister who has passed on, Sobonfu Some. I don't know if you're familiar with her. She's from Burkina Faso. She's of the Dagara people. Her brother recently passed away, Maladoma Patrice Some. But she has written some powerful things. I want you to hear this. She says in many cultures, including the Dagara culture, her culture, the idea is that you sculpt your face as you live, and each wrinkle shows a particular joy or pain you have survived. You would never in our culture have a facelift in order to look younger or color your hair when it turns gray. That would be a loss of beauty, a loss of grace. In other words, though what you've been talking about, this walking with both feelings, is oftentimes what we try to get rid of on our face. We don't like wrinkles. You see, but the wrinkles, she says, there are joy wrinkles, there are pain wrinkles.
Wow.
And they go to make you. They have made you. The pain has been real. You don't ignore it. You don't try to, what you're saying, you don't try to avoid it, but you embrace it as part of you. And she says, in our culture, African culture, again, against the European culture, your face is made up of these wrinkles of joy and pain, and you display them because that's your grace.
Oh, that's awesome. Now you gotta send me that.
I'll send it to you.
That's it. Yes. That's it. That's it. Oh man, you're making me think of a famous Earth, Wind, and Fire song, on your face.
Oh yes, yes,
on,
yes,
on your face.
yes.
Where
That's it.
the psalmist tries to explain to people that you can't hide your feelings. They just naturally will
Right.
show up on your face.
Exactly. Exactly.
Oh, that's very powerful. That's very, very powerful. That's very, very powerful. I'm also reminded of the ways in which it so goes against what we were taught during the period of African enslavement. We were taught during the period of African enslavement to not show our feelings. And I think that's what causes us to not embrace our feelings today, because we've carried this lesson that we've been indoctrinated with from 1619 to 1865. We've carried that lesson all these years.
No, that's
we
real.
we even now teach our future generations of children, never let them see you sweat. Don't get caught crying.
Big boys don't cry. Yeah.
Boys don't cry. That's a sign of weakness. That's a sign. That's a sign of weakness. And so then we end up raising a whole generation of
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
we support brothers who express emotions, who cry, who break down, who become anxious, who have emotions, who feel insecure, who get abused, who have mental illness, and stop ascribing language like, oh, that's not being a man, or that's unmanly.
Right.
A phrase that we've been trying to resist in the field of spiritual care recently is toxic masculinity. Mm-hmm. We cannot support toxic masculinity, and we have to be careful how we raise our boys. We got to make sure we're not raising our boys to lift up toxic masculinity in some sense. So we can't shame men for the ways in which men express their feelings, because that is in some sense what it's enslavers during African enslavement. That's what they indoctrinated us with. And so how do we go against that and say, now we can't live like that anymore?
Right. That is so real.
This is so amazing for us. And so a particular exercise that helps us begin to honor and all of the feelings that we experience is this particular exercise. I'm gonna place it on our screen, and again, we're gonna share these images. But it's important to every day take inventory of your feelings. Take inventory of your feelings. Are you thriving, surviving, struggling, or in crisis? Or in light of what we've been talking about today, how are you doing the both and of these? Maybe you're thriving and surviving. Maybe you're thriving and struggling. Maybe you're thriving and in crisis. Maybe you're struggling and in crisis. Maybe you're surviving and struggling. Really moving away from either or language. What gets us in trouble is our desire to use either or language. How do we resist or move away from either or language and embrace both and language? And so it's so important for us. It's so very important for us to take an inventory every day. This Advent season is about honoring all of our feelings and having hope and letting our hope sit right next to our scare. That's in a nutshell what true hope is all about, according to Dr. Raquel Letzum. True hope is not about washing away your feelings of sad, mad, or scared, but true hope is about letting your feelings sit right next to each other. And that's okay. That is totally, totally fine. So then last but not least, the final point I want to make on this is, how do you give yourself permission to feel all the feelings? Because in some sense, that's what this will boil down to. In order for us to feel all the feelings, we have to give ourselves permission to do that. Because for so long, we've been robbed of our ability to do that. And so sometimes we may even think to ourselves, I don't want to do that. But usually that's not our voice. That's the voice of somebody else that's talking to us. And we're carrying that voice and we're internalizing that voice. So one way to combat that voice is to say, okay, I need to give myself permission to feel. I need to give myself permission to feel freedom in all the ways in which that freedom shows up, in all the ways in which that freedom looks like. Thank you, family. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
I want to lift up real quick. Mama Inez asked the question, is that why people say black don't crack? Because we carry these feelings so well. And Jeanette says we've been taught to not look like what we've been through or going through, the human math. I want to say that we hear those sayings, but what Dr. Buhuro have been putting up is that people that embrace true hope, that allows the feelings of sadness, of fear, of anger, along with the feelings of joy and hope, of joy and exuberance, to allow those to go together. Those are the people that actually demonstrate something that comes from the inside, which is this inner glow. This inner glow of grace, that I'm a person that's a whole person. And that's why, people create the sayings, well, black don't crack. It's not that our faces don't bear the wrinkles, as Sobonfu Somé said. It is something that comes from the inside that is a balance. And that's beautiful because most folk are not in balance. And when you see that person, it blows you away and you say, black don't crack, or you say, you don't look like what you've been through. It's not because I'm hiding what I've been through. It's not because I ain't been crying. It ain't because I ain't been sharing my grief. It's that I've been doing that, but I've also allowed that to go along with the fact that faith is not the absence of fear. Faith is fear along with my trust in God. It's that I go to God and say, God, I trust you, but I'm scared. And that's what faith is, like you just said, hope. So that would be my take on it. I don't know if you want to.
Thank you. I'm gonna steal that. That's gonna be my new Facebook post. But I'm gonna give you credit to say that I got it from you. I'm gonna say that this is Pastor John Jackson's word. Yes. Faith is not the absence of fear. Faith is fear sitting alongside of our hope. That's very powerful. That is very, very powerful. That is very, very powerful.
This is timely. This is timely. You hit it right where it needs to be hit for this season, because it's tough. It is tough. It is tough. Around this point here, it is so tough. And so
yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, family, we're gonna see you next Tuesday. Remember, these pillars that we are looking at, we're looking at those pillars of hope, peace, joy, and love. And please share this with somebody else, because somebody needs to just hit that share button. And again, we'll look to see you on next Tuesday. God bless you.